So this is Baruch Fleischman, Parshas Kisisa. So the Zohar is with me, the Zohar on here, the words of Rebbe Shimon. Now we're heading over here to a special section. It's called the Rhyme Mehemna, which we've talked about before. The faithful shepherd is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is able to consolidate his spiritual aspect and come actually into the yeshiva and deliver Torah. But in order to understand this piece, the Matok Mitavash wants to try to help us out here in this Rhyme Mehemna, and he wants to give us an idea about some diuri. So let's see if we can learn this, and it's got some interesting aspects to it, but a lot of it we have to have some background to be able to understand this. Now what we understand, so we'll read it along. I guess what we'll do, we'll read along, and we'll see if we come to a place which needs explanation. The Havit is Maimer Rabban. In order to be able to understand this Maimer, Nachdem Bekitzer Divrei Harizal. Now we're going to bring this over. This is from the Mabu Sharim of the Ri. Ki'inyan and Mishkal. Now the Mishkal is a balance scale. It's like the thing which has some kind of a bar, and then there are two cups on each, one cup on each side, and we find out values as a result of balancing things. Now, what balance scale are we talking about? He said the concept of the balance scale, who sod hadas, it's the sod of das. Now, what's das? Das is one of the mochin. It's chokhmah, bina, and das. Das is actually the balance between chokhmah and bina, but let's hear what the Matok has to say about this, because it just in its own idea is very interesting. He says, it's sod of das, yesh bal dalid osius, shuhu chavayim. So the concept of das, he says, that is really refers to the name Havaya. Havaya, he says, is das. It's the balance scale. So he says there's a hint to this. You can understand the rem is the davar, because the word mishkal is a gematria of 470. Im dalid osiosa, but if you add on the four letters of it itself, olav mis bar das, it comes to 474, which is the gematria of das. So we want to understand that the concept of balancing is the concept of das. Now before we go too much further, let's understand that within das itself there are 5 chasadim and 5 gevuros. So the chasadim are this is considered to be the mayim, hamagdil es alilon, that causes the tree to grow. What tree are we talking about? We're talking about the tree of zeranpin. It causes zeranpin to grow. The five gevuros go through Zer Anpin also, but they go to the female aspect of Zer Anpin, and that's what we have to understand. 5 gevuros, five chasadim. So now he says like this. He says which this das and this 474 he's talking about, hanechlachas b'mishkal, which are divided into the balance scale bezeha ofen in this way. Let's take the name now. He's talking about the name Yud Ke Vav Ke Havaya. So he says, let's go like this. There are 2 hays in the name Havaya. Haim beis kapos hamishkal, so they are the 2 cups of the mishkal. In other words, you put things on one side and it balances the other side. Vos vav hi lashon hamishkal, so that's the bar on which the mishkal balances. Vos yud, so then now you have the 2 hays and a vav. You have to know what to do with the yud. He even hamishkailas. This is the stone that is actually used for measurement. So how does that go? What is that? In other words, that's what we're trying to measure. So it's how did this go? Now here comes into more Torah that we need to learn. He says, Ki letzorech yichud chub, for the purpose of making a yichud between Abba and Ima, which are also known as chokhmah and das. How do you make a yichud between Abba and Ima? And this is really important in every place that we see in Kabbalah. We do this by, he says, chub olos tipos man mebina. So we have 2 different kinds of lights that we have to understand. We have light which is called the or yashar, which is a light that is coming from up above and is coming down below, and it has another name which we'll get in a minute. And then we have a light which is called an or choser, a light that goes backwards. It's like a bubbler up. It bubbles up from the bottom, even though it may be going downwards, but within itself, it has the power to be able to make things reverse. So if you want to know how your prayers could or should be answered, how they're answered, then we have to understand what's going on in the reverse light. So he says, Ki litzorach yichud chub. Now, in order for these two to come together, because all the generation of all goodness comes from the yichud, the blending of these two opposites, which are Abba ve'ima, which are Chochma and Bina, which is Chochma represents the Or Yashar. That's the light that goes down from the top to the bottom, and it just would keep going. And then we have the light of Bina, which is a light really that is going backwards. And what's the backwards called? It's called Tipos Man. It's called the drops of Mayim Nukvin, which is female waters which go backwards. I call them editing waters. Anybody that's married knows that wives tend to always try to perfect physical things. Bathe the children, do the dishes, do the clothes, etc. I don't want to talk about anybody's particular marriage, but there are different ways in which women are always working things over, working them backwards. Tipos man bina, so that comes from bina. So bina starts the process of working. What is mayim nukvin? Mayim nukvin is desire, the fact that something is needed. So in other words, bina needs to have shefa from up above in order to be able to produce the children who are Zohar v'Nokar, Zeryanpin, and Malchus. So it's a tipos man bina, b'tzadim smallest, and this really works on the left side, because Bina is really on the left side of the flow of light from up above. And as I said, its nature is that it produces a light that wants to go backwards. Shel Hadash Yesh Sham He Gevura. So let's read the whole line again. He says, the Tzorach Yichud Chub, which is Abba Ve'ima, Olos Tipos Ma Mebina. So the first thing is, it's not that Abba is giving to her, that Abba wants to give to her, he does, but it's not that Abba starts the ball rolling. It's Bina that starts the ball rolling, because she's empty and she feels that she needs the connection. So therefore she sends up Mayim Nukvin towards Abba B'tzad Smolis on the left side. Shaladas Sheyeh Sham He Gevuros. There are 5 Gevuros though. There. Beyordos Tipas Mad, and then as this causes something else, a reverse process to happen, which is that the tipos of Mayim Duchrin, this is called male waters, Mechochma B'tzad Yuminis, that start going downwards as a result of this light on the left side, which is going upwards. It starts a wheel or a pulley system. One goes up and the other one starts coming down. So he said, Yordos tipos mad mechochma b'tzad hayumonis. It goes on the right side is where you find Chesed, Chochma, Chesed, and Netzach, and it starts flowing downwards there. So he says, Tipos Mad Mechochma B'tzad Yeminish Shaladas, which would be on the right side of Das. Yesh Sham He Chasadim, where are 5 Chasadim. So you have the 5 Gevuros going upwards, and you have the 5 Chasadim that are going downwards. V'sham Shokeles Tipas Hamad Shehi Os Yud, and then what happens now in Das is that Das now becomes the measuring or the balancing mechanism. That's the right word. Balancing mechanism. V'sham shokeles tipas hamad shehi os yud chochma, as tipas hamad the binas, and then it's so. In other words, the amount of man that goes up will draw down the amount of chochma that is coming down. So first you have. Let's read the words again. He says the words are v'yordos tipos mad. Let's try someplace else. Let's start. Ki letzorach yichud chub. What do you have to do in order to make a yichud for chub? You have to have this tipa of man comes up from Bina, b'tzad smolish shaladasha sheyesham hegavuros, v'yordos tipas mad, and this causes mad to come down mechochma b'tzad yumanis, which is on the right side of das, sheyesham hechasadim, and now you have chasadim coming down, gevuros going up and chasadim going down. V'sham shokeles tipas mad shehi os yud, and this is where the balance comes in, of the drop of mad, which is the letter Yud, the Chochma, as Tipas Aman, and then they come into a balanced situation. And that balanced situation is where? It's in Das. So he says that Shuhu Os Yud the Chochma, as Tipas Aman the Bina, Shalot Tishkol Yosef Rebenu. In other words, they should not have more weight on the Chochma side than on the Bina side, because the Bina is bringing up, and what Bina brings up, that is, they're going to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, request of the things that Bina needs, brings down the same amount, or the matching amount from up above, through Chochmah, Yosim Imenu, Kikafi Erika Mishkal Hamad. So he says, according to the I guess the weight of the Mayim Nukva that's coming down, Kach Tibas Haman Kenegda, you'll have the same balance on the man. So you understand what he's saying here is this. When you pray, when you learn Torah, when we do this, we're actually sending up Mayim Nukvin. We're saying the Torah, we're learning the Torah, it's going upwards. And as a result of that, that is Mayim Nukvin. Mayim Nukvin brings back brachot. Sometimes we don't recognize the brachot. That's not like immediate. It's a process. But Os Vav, so the Vav, he Etzem Vadas is the Vadas itself. A Kolelis as a Chug, which has within it, as we said before, Chasadim and Gevuros. Sheba Shehem Sod Beis Kapos, which is the secret of these two cups that we're talking about. And that's the introduction, and that's going to be the Torah here on Parshas Kisisa.